She came to Creekwood to escape her past. But her past had been searching for her all along. Cleo Hart is a widow, a mother, and a woman running on empty. With 2 children, a mountain of debt, and nothing left to lose, she moves to a small town hoping for a fresh start. But the moment she walks into the local diner, everything changes. 3 bikers from the Devil's Creek MC can't stop staring. One looks at her like she's a ghost. Another watches her with quiet intensity. And the third, the club president, sees something in her eyes that makes his world stop. Because those eyes are his eyes. 28 years ago, a baby girl vanished without a trace. 28 years of searching. 28 years of unanswered questions. And now she's sitting right in front of him. But Cleo doesn't know the truth. She doesn't know that the family she always dreamed of has been waiting for her all along. She doesn't know that the man staring at her across the diner is her father. Secrets. Danger. A love she never expected. A family she never knew existed. And a past that refuses to let her go. This is not just a story about a fresh start. This is a story about coming home. Welcome to Devil's Creek MC, a story of family, secrets, and second chances. This novel will be uploaded episode by episode right here on this channel. So if you love emotional romance, biker drama, and heart-wrenching twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop daily. That's right, every single day a new chapter awaits you. Join Cleo on her journey. Discover the truth, feel the emotion, and fall in love with the characters who will stay with you long after the story ends. Hit that subscribe button now and let's begin this incredible ride together. Because some stories aren't just told, they're felt. Cleo Hart came to Creekwood for one reason, to start over. Widowed at 28 and left with 2 children and more debt than she can handle, all Cleo wants is a fresh start. A new town. A new job. A chance to rebuild the life she lost when her husband died. The last thing she needs is the attention of Devil's Creek MC. Especially Rick Graves Carter, the president of Devil's Creek MC, who looks at her like he's seen a ghost. And Gabriel Chains Mercer, the club's loyal vice president, whose quiet strength and watchful eyes make her feel safe in ways she can't explain. Cleo has spent her entire life with questions she'll never have answers to. Raised in foster care, she knows only one thing about the woman who gave birth to her. Her name was Maria. She never knew her father. Never knew where she came from. Never knew someone had been searching for her all along. As old wounds collide with new beginnings, Cleo discovers that sometimes the family you've been missing your whole life is closer than you think. And sometimes home is waiting where you least expect to find it. But from the moment she walks into the town diner, the bikers can't stop staring. Mom? I blinked a few times and forced myself to focus on the endless, rain-soaked highway ahead. Yeah, baby? I asked softly. Are we almost there? Tommy's sleepy voice drifted from the back seat. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, my chest tightening. His dark hair was messy from sleeping against the car door, and his face was still puffy from his nap. This book belongs to Lillipad 234 and is only available on Inkit. Wade's face. Sometimes looking at Tommy hurt so much I could barely breathe. Almost, I lied gently. Another 30 minutes. Beside him, Skylar snorted quietly. You said that like an hour ago. I smiled despite myself. Did not. Did too. Tommy groaned dramatically. I'm starving. There's a diner coming up soon, I promised. We'll stop there. That seemed to satisfy him for a few more minutes. Rain tapped steadily on the windshield, and the wipers had squeaked for the last 2 hours, making me restless. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as another sign appeared through the fog. Creekwood, population 4,312. Small town. Fresh start. New life. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. The truth was, I had no idea what I was doing. For months ago, I had a house, a husband, and stability. Bills were paid on time, and the future felt safe, even if life had never been perfect. Now, everything we owned was crammed into my old Honda. I owed $10,000, and my kids were counting on me to keep us together, even when most days I could barely breathe. Life could fall apart so quickly. I swallowed hard against the sudden burn in my throat. Wade had been gone for 4 months, and some mornings I still woke up reaching for him. I still expected him beside me. I still heard his laugh in my head. People acted like grief got easier once you learned someone wasn't perfect. Like finding out Wade had a gambling problem could erase 15 years of love. It didn't. It just made everything messy, because Wade wasn't a bad person. He was my best friend. We met when we were 14. I'd just been dumped into my 6th foster home, carrying everything I owned in 2 trash bags and pretending I wasn't scared all the time. Wade was the quiet boy who sat behind the auto shop with a split lip and bruised ribs. He said he got them from falling off his bike. I knew better. Kids like us always knew the truth. Wade had an abusive drunk for a father. I had nobody. No parents. No family. Just one name. Maria. Maria. That was all I knew about the woman who gave birth to me and then disappeared forever. No last name, no photo, no answers. Wade used to joke that we were 2 strays who found each other first. Maybe he was right. By 16, he was sneaking through my foster bedroom window almost every night. By 18, we stood in front of a judge, getting married with $43 in our shared bank account and no idea what we were doing. A few months later, I got pregnant with Skylar. Everyone expected us to fail. Maybe, by the numbers, we should have. But we loved each other enough to keep fighting. Wade worked long hours as a mechanic while I finished school. We scraped by, struggled, and somehow built a life from nothing. When Tommy was born 4 years later, Wade cried harder than I did, holding him for the first time. He loved our children fiercely. That's why some of this still didn't make sense. How could the man who kissed me goodbye every morning gamble away our mortgage payments? How could he hold me at night and hide debt collectors from me during the day? I didn't know about any of it until after the accident, the funeral, and the bank notices, when strangers started calling my phone demanding money I didn't have. The house was gone within weeks. Everything we built disappeared right along with him. A soft rustling sound pulled me from my thoughts. Skylar sat curled against the window in Wade's old gray sweater, sleeves hanging past her hands. Headphones covered her ears, and an old iPod rested in her lap like something precious. At 10, she'd become too quiet lately, too watchful, and it broke my heart because she looked just like me. Same honey brown hair. Same green eyes. Same face. Sometimes when she looked at me, it felt like seeing my younger self, the lonely foster kid who pretended she wasn't scared of the world. You okay, bug? I asked gently. Skylar glanced at me before shrugging one shoulder. You're doing the worried thing again. The worried thing? You get this line right here. She pointed at her forehead seriously. I laughed. Great. I'm aging rapidly at 28. You're basically ancient already. Wow. Rude. That earned me the smallest smile. God, I miss seeing her smile. For weeks after Wade died, our house felt unbearably quiet. It was as if grief had moved in with us. But this move? This was supposed to help. New town. New school. New memories. A chance to breathe somewhere Wade wasn't in every corner, because staying had been slowly destroying me. Every street reminded me of him. So did every grocery aisle. Every unpaid bill sat on the counter. I couldn't keep drowning there. The teaching job at Creekwood Elementary felt like fate when I found it online at 2 in the morning during another money panic. Small town. Steady paycheck. Temporary teacher housing. Hope. It was a small, fragile hope, but it was enough to keep me going. Rain kept falling as we drove deeper into town, under tall pine trees and thick mountain fog. Creekwood looked like the kind of place people forgot existed. Old storefronts. Flickering neon signs. Weathered buildings. Quiet. The kind of quiet that felt heavy. Tommy stirred awake just as a glowing diner sign appeared through the rain. Can we stop now? He mumbled. I smiled as I pulled into the parking lot. Yeah, baby, I whispered. We can stop. Tommy was practically asleep again by the time we climbed out of the car. Rain drizzled as I hurried around the car and opened the back door. Tommy reached for me with tired arms, and I lifted him onto my hip, even though my back ached from hours of driving. Skylar climbed out beside us, pulling Wade's sweater tighter around herself as she slipped the iPod into her pocket. The diner glowed warmly against the dark, wet evening. Neon lights buzzed in the windows, and for the first time in days, I felt something inside me loosen a little. Maybe because it looked normal. Safe. I could do safe. Come on, I said softly. Let's get some food. A bell chimed overhead when I pushed open the diner door, and instantly the room went silent. I hesitated as every head in the diner turned toward us. Heat crept up my neck under the sudden attention. A few older women near the counter stared openly, and a man halfway through lifting his coffee cup froze. What the hell? Tommy buried his face against my shoulder while Skylar moved closer to my side. Then I noticed them. 3 men in leather jackets sat in the back corner near the windows. Large patches covered their backs and shoulders. Devil's Creek MC, bikers. The biggest one had dark hair streaked with gray and a face shaped by hard years. Next to him, a younger blonde man stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. But the man in the middle caught my attention. Dark eyes. Dark hair. broad shoulders. He was calm in a way that felt dangerous. His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable. It should have scared me. Instead, something strange settled low in my chest. Not fear. Not panic. Safety. Somehow, impossibly, I just walked into a room full of strangers and the tight knot in my chest loosened for the first time in months. The dark-haired biker's expression tightened just a little as his eyes moved over Skylar and Tommy before coming back to me. The whole diner still felt frozen, and suddenly I had the overwhelming sense that walking into Creekwood had changed everything. The moment the diner door opened, all my instincts kicked in. She wasn't a threat, but she was impossible to ignore. Rain dripped from her dark honey-brown hair as she walked in, holding a sleeping boy on her hip. A girl about 10 clung to her, lost in a worn-out gray sweater. The woman looked exhausted. Not just tired, but truly worn out. Life had taken everything from her and still demanded more. Something clenched in my chest. Then the entire diner went silent. I frowned. The woman stopped near the entrance, uneasy with all the eyes on her. Honestly, I'd feel the same way. Everyone in the room was staring. Sally was the first to move. The diner owner dropped the coffee pot and walked straight toward the woman. When Sally got closer, she stopped in her tracks. Her face went pale. For a moment, she just stared, then her eyes filled with tears. What the hell? Bolt muttered beside me. I looked back at the woman. I really looked, and then it hit me. Not everything made sense, but enough did. Same dark hair. Same smile. Same face shape. Nearly 30 years had passed since Maria disappeared from Creekwood. I'd seen old photographs, and the woman near the door looked so much like her that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Only one thing didn't match. Her eyes. Green. Not Maria's. Green like graves. Sally recovered first. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured gently, looking between the woman and the two exhausted kids. "Come on. Let's get you seated and get some food into those babies." Relief flashed across the woman's face. The little boy buried his face in her shoulder. The girl stayed close. Protective. Watching. Smart kid. Sally led them toward a booth. The entire diner tracked their movement. Nobody said a damn word. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why the hell does she look like Maria?" The words came out lower than I intended. Nobody answered right away. Then Rage sat forward, his eyes fixed on the woman. "It can't be." A strange feeling formed in my gut because I knew exactly what he was thinking. Everyone in the club knew the story. Maria. The missing baby. The child nobody ever found. The child Graves spent years searching for. The woman glanced up then. Just for a second. Our eyes locked across the diner and something hit me square in the chest. No recognition. Not familiarity. Something far more threatening. Interest. I hated the feeling immediately. If she was who we thought, she was completely off limits. Roman/Rage POV, I couldn't look away from her. The sounds in the diner faded. Sally talking, coffee cups clinking, Bolt muttering. None of it mattered. All I could see was her. The woman sat in the booth, the boy curled up beside her, and the girl slid in next to her. She looked deeply tired, as if she'd carried the weight of the world for years. But that wasn't what caught my eye. It was her face. I grew up hearing the story. Not often. Dad rarely talked about it, but everyone in the club knew the story. Maria. The girl who'd gotten pregnant with the president's child. The girl who'd disappeared before he could bring them home. The girl who'd taken his daughter and vanished. I never knew Maria. I'd only seen old photographs. Dad kept a handful of faded pictures hidden, but the woman across the diner looked so much like them that my pulse raced. Same hair. Same smile. Same face. Except for one thing. Her eyes. Green, not Maria's brown. Green. It was the same green the first saw every day in the mirror, the same green as my father's. The Carter eyes. It can't be, I muttered because it seemed impossible. 28 years had passed. 28 damn years without a single trace. People don't just show up in your hometown after almost 30 years. My gaze shifted to the little girl sitting close to her. She had the same honey brown hair and green eyes. My chest tightened. Jesus Christ. The resemblance was everywhere once you saw it. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My thumb paused over Dad's contact for a second. What the hell was I supposed to say? Hey, old man. A woman who looks just like the girl you lost almost 30 years ago walked into Sally's diner. I typed anyway. Get to Sally's. No. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. What? The woman laughed softly at something the little boy said. For a second she smiled. My heart nearly stopped because I'd seen that smile before in a photograph Dad thought no one knew about. I gulped nervously and typed the only response I could think of. Just get here. For the first time in my life, I prayed I was wrong. Rick/President Graves POV. The text made no damn sense. I looked at my phone for a long moment before reading it again. Get to Sally's. No. That was all. No explanation, no sarcastic comment from Roman. Just 4 words. I frowned. Across the clubhouse office, Stella glanced up from the paperwork spread across the desk. Everything okay? I looked at my wife. My anchor. My home. The woman who'd stood with me through every damn storm life had thrown my way. I've got to head to Sally's. One dark eyebrow lifted. Roman? Yeah. The look she gave me showed she was just as confused. Roman never panicked, and he didn't send cryptic texts unless something was really wrong. I pushed to my feet. Before I could say anything else, Stella grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair. I'm coming. A small smile tugged at my mouth. Something's never changed. Stella still said it the same way. Not asking. Telling. I never stopped her. Never wanted to. Stella had earned the right to stand wherever the hell she wanted. Especially beside me. She'd stood by my side so many times. She'd been there through everything. The club wars. The bloodshed. The losses. The nights I almost drowned myself in whiskey after Maria disappeared. The years I spent searching for the daughter I couldn't find. Most women would have walked away. Hell, they probably should have. Not Stella. She'd held me together when I was barely hanging on. Never once telling me to let it go. Never once asking me to stop looking. She gave me Roman, gave me love, gave me a life, and somehow still found room in her heart for the daughter I lost before I ever got to know her. I slid my cut on while Stella zipped up her jacket. A few minutes later, we were on the road. Cold wind rushed past as my bike sped toward Sally's diner. I didn't know why Roman wanted me there, but my gut twisted more with every mile. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The diner parking lot was packed when we arrived. I cut the engine. Stella climbed off behind me. Together we headed inside. The familiar bell above the door rang. Immediately I spotted them. Roman, Chains, Bull. All sitting at the same table. None of them looked at me. Not one. Their attention was fixed somewhere across the diner. My stomach dropped. Slowly I followed their line of sight toward a booth near the far window. A woman was seated there with 2 children. A little boy curled against her side, fighting sleep. A girl sat close to her, wearing an oversized gray sweater, her green eyes watching the room carefully. Protective. Alert. The woman laughed softly at something the boy said. The sound carried across the diner. My heart stopped for a second. No. My gaze focused on her face. Dark honey brown hair. Delicate features. A smile I'd spent nearly 3 decades trying to forget. For a moment, all I saw was Maria, 20 years old and laughing under a summer sky. The girl I loved. The girl who disappeared. The girl who took a piece of my soul with her. Then the woman turned fully. Her green eyes met mine from across the diner. My eyes. The Carter eyes. The world seemed to shift beneath my feet. Every sound vanished. The conversations, the music, the clatter of dishes all faded away. Gone. 28 years. 28 years of searching. 28 years of dead ends. 28 years of wondering if she was alive. She was safe. If she'd ever known I wanted her. If she'd ever known I looked. My chest squeezed so hard it hurt to breathe. Rick? Stella's voice sounded distant, because all I could do was stare at the woman. I looked at the little girl who looked so much like her, at the little boy leaning against her side, at the life she'd built without ever knowing me. No, not just a woman. Not just a stranger. Not if those eyes meant what I thought they did. And suddenly, after 28 years, I was looking at my daughter. She knew people were staring, knew something was off. The discomfort was written all over her face. Slowly, I forced my eyes away from her. Stella squeezed my arm gently. When I looked at her, she gave me a small nod. She knew. Of course she did. She'd seen the same thing I had. The same eyes. The same face. The same impossible possibility. Then Stella smiled. She didn't smile at me but at her, across the diner. The woman blinked in surprise before giving a hesitant smile in return. A kind smile. The kind you give strangers when you have no idea they're looking at a piece of their own heart. My chest tightened. Girl. The word appeared automatically before I shut it down. She wasn't a girl. She was a woman, a mother. She'd built a whole life without me, and she had no idea who I was to her. No idea I'd searched. No idea I'd spent years following every lead I could find. No idea I'd wanted her from the second I knew she existed. I looked at her children. My grandchildren. Jesus Christ. My grandchildren. The little boy was nearly asleep against her shoulder. The girl sat straight and watchful next to her mother. Protective. Just like Roman. How was I supposed to walk over there? How could I tell her that everything she believed about being abandoned was wrong? I'd searched. I never stopped looking. Not a single day passed without wondering where she was. How could I tell her she was my daughter without scaring her away? Because after 28 years, I'd finally found her. I'd be damned if I lost her again. By the time we left the diner, the rain had eased to little more than a drizzle, not completely, but enough that I could loosen my grip on the steering wheel. Tommy had perked up. Apparently, fries, burger, and chocolate milkshake could solve all problems for a 6-year-old. Skylar sat quietly, watching Creekwood pass through the window. I couldn't tell if she was nervous, excited, or simply exhausted. Truthfully, I felt all three. The directions the school had emailed me were easy enough to follow, and 20 minutes later, I turned onto a quiet lane lined with tall oak trees. My stomach tightened. This was it, our new home, a fresh start. The little white cottage came into view. It wasn't grand, nor was it large, but it looked cared for. The small porch wrapped around the front, flower beds sat beneath the windows, and an old oak tree shaded half the garden. Tommy pressed his face against the window. Mom? What is it? It has a porch. I couldn't help smiling. Skylar rolled her eyes. It's just a porch. Tommy gasped dramatically. No, it's not. It's an awesome porch. I laughed quietly as I switched off the engine and thought to myself, could this really become home? Tommy was out of the car before I had chance to open my own door. Skylar climbed out more calmly, although I caught the small smile as she looked at the cottage. I unlocked the front door. The door swung open and relief flooded through me. The photographs hadn't done it justice. The cottage was fully furnished, a beautiful, bright open-plan living room leading into a bright kitchen. All rooms furnished, beds made. Everything we needed, thankfully. I hadn't realized how worried I'd been until that moment. Tommy had already disappeared. Mom? I smiled. What now? I've got a wardrobe. He shouted whilst running around looking at his new home. Good. I shouted back, and 2 seconds later, Mom. What now? My room has 2 windows. Skylar laughed. I think he's broken. I heard that. Tommy came running towards us. The sound of their laughter echoed through the cottage. It already felt warmer. Right, I announced. I need 2 very important helpers. Tommy appeared instantly. I'll help. Skylar followed behind him. What do we have to do? 1 backpack each. Tommy stood a little taller. We've got this. The 2 of them marched outside, ready to unpack the car as if it was the most important job in the world. Watching them come back inside with their backpacks made my heart ache. Good job. I smiled softly at them. Tommy beamed and Skylar tried not to smile. Thankfully, the rain held off long enough for me to carry the important things inside. Suitcases, school bags, and a few boxes. Everything else could wait until tomorrow. Tommy looked around the living room. We should build a fort. I blinked. A fort? Yeah. He grinned. I looked at Skylar and she shrugged. I mean, a smile tugged at her lips. It might be fun. Then let's build the best fort this cottage has ever seen. Tommy cheered, and within minutes, blankets had disappeared from the cupboards, dining chairs were dragged across the room, and cushions somehow ended up everywhere. I wasn't entirely sure how we'd managed it, but the fort took up almost half the living room. Tommy crawled inside proudly. It's perfect. It is, I agreed. Skylar crawled in beside him. It's actually pretty cool. Tommy looked smug. I know. We all settled in and laughter took over. My alarm went off at 5:30. For a few blissful seconds I forgot where I was. Forgot about the move. Forgot about Creekwood. Forgot that everything had changed. Then reality settled over me. The small teacher's cottage, the unfamiliar bedroom, and the empty side of the bed. My chest tightened as the loss hit me all over again. 4 months. 4 months without Wade. Some mornings I still expected to roll over and find him there. Still expected to hear him humming badly while making coffee. Still expected him to walk through the door after work with grease on his hands and a smile on his face. Grief was cruel like that. It lets you forget for a moment only to remind you all over again. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Not today. Today was important. Today wasn't about what I'd lost. It was about what I was trying to build. A fresh start. For me. For Skylar. For Tommy. I pushed the covers back and climbed out of bed. By 6:30, I was fully dressed and trying to convince Tommy that school wasn't actually a government conspiracy meant to torture 6-year-olds. I don't want to go. You haven't even been yet. I still don't want to. I hid my smile behind my coffee mug. Skylar rolled her eyes across the table. You'll make friends. Tommy narrowed his eyes. You don't know that. I do. You don't. I do. You don't. I do. Guys. Both immediately looked at me. I pointed towards their breakfast. Eat. They obeyed. Mostly. Skylar looked calmer than her brother. But I knew her too well. She kept adjusting the sleeves of Wade's old sweater, a nervous habit she'd picked up after he died. Seeing it twisted something in me even as I hoped we were finding our footing. You okay, Bug? She shrugged. I'm fine. Which meant she wasn't. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We're going to be okay. Her green eyes met mine and for a second she looked so much like the little girl she'd been before grief found us. I know. I wasn't sure if she believed me. Truthfully, I wasn't sure if I believed me either. But we were here now and there was no turning back. Creekwood Elementary sat on the edge of town, surrounded by towering pine trees. It looked more like a mountain lodge than a school. The building wasn't large, nor was the car park, but the place somehow felt welcoming. The moment we walked through the doors, I realized just how different small-town life was. Everyone knew everyone. Teachers greeted pupils by name, and parents stopped to chat in the corridors. The secretary seemed to know exactly who I was before I introduced myself. Welcome to Creekwood Elementary, Cleo. I blinked. Thank you. She smiled. We're happy to have you. Small towns were strange. Painfully friendly. By 10 o'clock I'd been offered coffee 3 times, homemade muffins twice, and one woman I'd never met had somehow learned Tommy liked dinosaurs. It should have felt friendly. Instead, it left me with that same odd sense that everyone knew more than they should. My kindergarten class was wonderful. Energetic. Chaotic. Loud. Exactly what 5-year-olds were supposed to be. For the first time in months, I got lost in work and stopped thinking about bills or debt. I wasn't thinking about everything I'd lost, just teaching. Just living, and it felt nice. It almost surprised me after so much heaviness. At lunch, I sat in the staff room with a sandwich and listened to conversations drift around me. Sally said she nearly dropped the coffee pot. Haven't seen Graves in the diner in months. Looked like she'd seen a ghost. I frowned. There it was again. That strange feeling. The same one I'd had since walking into the diner Friday. Like everyone knew something I didn't and was careful not to say it out loud. The second someone noticed I was listening, the conversation changed. Immediately. Too immediately. My stomach tightened. I pretended not to notice, but I did. It bothered me more than I wanted to admit. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. By the time the final bell rang, I was exhausted, but it was the good kind. The kind that comes from doing something you love. Maybe this could work. Maybe Creekwood really could become home. I gathered my things and headed towards the pickup area. The moment I stepped outside, the school doors burst open. Children flooded into the car park, and right in the middle of them were my 2. Tommy came running first. Mom. I barely had time to brace myself before he crashed into my legs. He was laughing, really laughing. The sound hit me right in the heart. God, I'd missed hearing him laugh like that. Good day? I asked. The best. I smiled. The best. The absolute best. A little blonde girl appeared beside him. I helped. Tommy nodded. Lola's my friend. For the first time all day, something inside me truly relaxed. One day in school and he'd already made a friend. The little girl grinned. He's funny? I laughed. Well, that's certainly one way to make friends. Tommy puffed out his chest. I'm very funny. Debatable, Skylar said as she finally emerged from the school building. A dark-haired boy walked beside her, carrying his backpack over one shoulder. The two of them were arguing about something. Comfortably. Like they'd known each other longer than a day. My heart squeezed. Friday, I'd been terrified I'd uprooted my children for nothing. Today, they looked happier than they had in months. Maybe I hadn't completely ruined their lives after all. Maybe this place was already giving them something I couldn't, and that thought hurt almost as much as it helped. Mom, this is Maddox. The boy stopped beside Skylar and nodded politely. Ma'am? Hi, Maddox. Maddox showed me where everything was, Skylar said. The boy shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't hard. It was nice, Skylar argued. The corner of his mouth twitched, and for the first time since Wade died, I saw my daughter smile for real. Not the small, polite smile she'd learned over the past few months. This was a real smile, one that reached her eyes, and seeing it almost broke me. God, I missed that. Grandma. The little blonde girl beside Tommy suddenly took off. I looked up. A blonde woman with warm blue eyes stepped toward us. I recognized her right away. She was the woman from the diner, the one who'd smiled at me. She was the only person in the diner who'd made me feel welcome. Still, as she came closer, that uneasy feeling stayed with me. Lola launched herself into her arms. The older woman laughed and hugged her close. "Good day, sweetheart?" "The best." "That good, huh?" "The best," Tommy agreed immediately. Her gaze shifted to him and her smile widened. "I can see that." Then she looked at me. Really looked, not in the strange way some of the townspeople had since I arrived. Just kindly. Still, it didn't quite ease the feeling that I was missing something. "You must be Cleo." "That's me." She offered her hand. "I'm Stella Carter." There was something comforting about her. Something that immediately put me at ease, even as it reminded me how rare that feeling had become. "It's good to meet you." "You too." Her eyes drifted towards Tommy and Lola, who were already talking over each other again. "Looks like they'd become friends." "It would seem so." Tommy suddenly grabbed Lola's hand. "Can I come to your house?" "No, you come to mine." "No, mine." "No, mine." I laughed. Stella laughed too, warm and genuine. "Well," she said, "it seems they've already made plans." "We have," Tommy informed us seriously. Lola nodded. "We need a playdate." "A playdate?" Stella repeated. "Yep." Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I bit back another smile. Children really were amazing. One day was all it took. Stella looked at me and smiled. "We're having a family barbecue at the clubhouse on Saturday." I blinked. "Oh, family barbecue." The words felt strangely foreign, like something that belonged to other people. Not me. "It's nothing fancy," Stella continued. "Just family, kids running around, too much food. And grown men arguing over who's in charge of the grill." A laugh escaped me and her eyes warmed. "You and the children should come." Before I could answer, Skylar spoke up. "Maddox said he'll be there." The boy sighed dramatically. "My dad makes me go." "You love it." "I tolerate it." Skylar laughed and Maddox smiled. Tommy immediately looked up at me. "So will Lola." Four hopeful faces turned towards me. Tommy, Skylar, Lola, Maddox, waiting. For the first time since Wade died, my children looked excited about something, not pretending, not forcing it. Actually excited. The sight warmed me and hurt me at the same time. My throat tightened. Saturday sounds nice. The cheer that went up was immediate. Tommy fist pumped the air. Lola jumped up and down. Even Skylar looked pleased. Beside me, Stella's smile softened and for a moment, I could have sworn she looked relieved. It was as if she were happy we'd said yes. It felt like something more than a simple invitation had just fallen into place. Eventually, everyone began saying their goodbyes. Maddox headed towards a pickup truck waiting near the curb. Stella took Lola's hand. "It was lovely meeting you properly, Cleo." "You too. I'll see you Saturday." I watched them walk away before turning towards my own children. Tommy was talking nonstop about Lola. Skylar was already discussing barbecue plans with Maddox from across the car park. As we headed to the car, I found myself smiling. The drive home was loud, but it was the best kind of loud. Tommy talked about school. Skylar talked about friends. They talked over each other, laughed, and made plans for Saturday. And for the first time in months, the noise in the car wasn't grief. It wasn't silence or loss. It was life, and it felt so fragile it could break my heart. It was life. Maybe moving to Creekwood wasn't running away. Maybe it was finally running towards something, even if I was still learning how to trust it. The rest of the week fell into a routine. School, home, homework, dinner, and bed. For the first time in months, life felt almost normal. Tommy wouldn't stop talking about Lola. Each morning began with him asking if it was Saturday yet. Every afternoon, he gave me a full report about whatever adventure he and Lola had during break time. Skylar was just as bad. According to her, Maddox was the most annoying person she'd ever met, but also the only one worth sitting with at lunch. I decided not to mention how that didn't make sense. She'd probably roll her eyes so hard it might kill me. As for me, I was settling into Creekwood better than I thought I would. The school was welcoming, my students were great, and even though I sometimes felt like everyone knew something I didn't, the town was starting to feel less temporary and more like a place we could belong. One thing I didn't expect was seeing members of Devil's Creek MC all over town. They weren't intimidating though. Just everywhere. The club felt like a natural part of the town. On Wednesday, I spotted the young blonde biker from the diner, helping an older woman change a flat tire outside the grocery shop. The woman spent more time complaining about him kneeling on the pavement than he spent fixing the tire. He took it with a grin. On Thursday, I saw him carrying tables into the church hall while a group of older women shouted instructions at him from all sides. The big biker followed every order. On Friday morning, I saw him kneel next to a crying little boy outside the school. The boy's bike chain had come off. 10 minutes later, the bike was fixed, the boy was smiling, and Rage's hands were covered in grease. I couldn't reconcile any of it. The leather cut, the tattoos, the reputation bikers carried. None of it fit the man I kept seeing around town. He didn't really pay attention to me, or at least that's what I told myself. Sometimes I'd look up and catch him watching me. It wasn't uncomfortable or flirty or threatening. Just curious, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. The strange thing was, whenever he caught me looking, he smiled. It was a real smile. Then he'd go back to whatever he was doing. By Friday afternoon, I was smiling back. Maybe Creekwood wasn't what I'd expected. Maybe the people weren't either. And judging by the excitement currently vibrating through my house, Saturday couldn't arrive fast enough. The next morning, we headed to the clubhouse. Saturday morning, the clubhouse wasn't nearly as intimidating as I'd expected. Children ran across the grass chasing one another. Music drifted from somewhere near the back of the property. The smell of barbecue filled the air, people laughed and talked. A few men stood around oversized grills, arguing over something that appeared deeply important to them. Probably meat. Tommy was out of the car before I'd fully parked. "Tommy?" I called. "I'm waiting," he yelled back. Apparently there was a difference. Skylar climbed out beside me, shaking her head. "He's been like this all morning." I noticed. I took a deep breath and looked at the clubhouse. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe going to a biker club barbecue after knowing these people for less than a week was totally crazy. Before I could talk myself into leaving, Stella appeared on the clubhouse porch. When she spotted us, her whole face lit up with relief and happiness, something warm and real. She walked straight over and my nerves settled almost instantly. "You're here." I laughed softly. "We are. I'm so glad." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. Then I noticed movement behind her. The older biker from the diner stepped onto the porch. Graves, the club president. For a moment he stood there looking at us, me, Skylar, and Tommy. Something passed over his face, something so raw it made my chest tighten. Relief. Like he'd been worried we wouldn't come, like our being there mattered far more than it should. Then it was gone. Hidden beneath a calm smile. "Glad you made it," he said. His voice was steady and casual, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite figure out. Whatever it was, it made me smile back before I even realized it. "Thanks for having us. Continue?"